Kelly requested it's the inspired by the life of Saint Francis. I wander with thee, and we'll see if I can sing with my COVID voice. Father, now that I wander with thee, flowers and fields are alive with thy joy. All that I own to thee I've given. Now I sing in thy love I am free. Father, now that I dance in thy name, birds and animals share in my song. All my sorrows, all my merriment, join in music to set hearts aflame. Sing with me. Father, now that I wander with thee, flowers and fields are alive with thy joy. All that I own to thee I've given. Now I sing in thy love I am free. Father, now that I dance in thy name, birds and animals share in my song. All my sorrows, all my merriment, join in music to set hearts aflame. All my sorrows, all my merriment, join in music to set hearts aflame.
I know we sang this last week, so we're all tuned up and ready and know the words. If you don't know the words, they're in your chant book under C, Jackie? Cloisters? Cloisters, yeah. Good morning, welcome. Sitting upright with spine erect, hands, palms uplifted in the hip creases, drawing the shoulders up and sending them down the back, opening up the door of your heart and lifting that consciousness to the spiritual eye, the divine witness, watching the natural breath, calling on the divine in your heart of hearts, using the ancient mantra from the great Babaji Krishna, the great yogi, and affirm on the inhale, I am, and on the exhale, spirit. Affirm the truth of who you are. Identify with that soul spirit. In Sanskrit, on the inhale, hum, and on the exhale, saw. And we'll meditate together in silence for 5 minutes, practicing the mantra Hung Saw.
Remaining in an inward state, please listen to this week's affirmation for self-healing. Openness. Openness can be a great virtue, but only when it is exercised with discrimination. To be open to wrong ideas or to people who would harm you would be foolish. For it is not with openness that error can be conquered, but with love. Openness of mind is a virtue when it is centered in the desire for the truth. Openness of heart is a virtue when it is centered in love for God. Both mind and heart, however, need filters to screen out what is not true and what is not of God. This we can do by referring back for approval to the divine presence within whatever comes to us. We must be ever open to truth and to God, but ever closed, or at least indifferent, to error and delusion. Please repeat after me in a loud voice, awakening the conscious mind. My mind is open to the truth.
My mind is open to the truth,
Whatever its source. True statements remain valid. Even if hurled in anger. And now in a conversational tone. My mind is open to the truth. Whatever its source. True statements remain valid. Even if hurled in anger. And now repeat the affirmation in a whisper, bringing it into the subconscious mind. My mind is open to the truth, whatever its source. True statements remain valid, even if hurled in anger. And now silently, mentally affirm. My mind is open to the truth, whatever its source. True statements remain valid, even if hurled in anger. Now with rising aspiration, bringing the affirmation up to the point between the eyebrows, bringing it into superconscious awareness. Again, mentally affirm. My mind is open to the truth, whatever its source. True statements remain valid, even if hurled in anger. My mind is open to the truth, whatever its source. True statements remain valid, even if hurled in anger. Divine Mother, let me hear thy melodies everywhere, in the laughing brooks, in the songs of nightingales, yes, even in the roar of city traffic. Behind all sounds, let me listen for thy voice alone.
And now we'll have our reading from Rays of the One Light.
This is a reading from Rays of the One Light, weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Ananda. Week 45. Faith is a call to prayer. Prayer is a call to faith. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. In the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapters 7 and 21, we read, "Ask and it shall be given you. Seek and ye shall find. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. Verily I say unto you, if you have faith and doubt not, if you shall say unto this mountain, be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, it shall be done. And all things whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing, ye shall receive." Paramhansa Yogananda showed by his own example that prayer is a power, provided we believe deeply in that power. When our thoughts and feelings are strongly focused and then united in growing awareness to the divine presence within, they can bring even seemingly unrealistic wishes to fulfillment. When Paramhansa Yogananda was in charge of his school in Ranchi, India, he took the boys on occasional outings to the surrounding countryside. There was a waterfall not far away. He told Swami Ananda, where I took them sometimes, it was dangerous to cross there. But I would cry out to the boys, "Do you believe in God?" "Yes," they would shout back enthusiastically. And so we crossed in safety. Years later, after I had gone to America, one of the teachers tried to do the same thing, but he lacked spiritual power. One of the boys slipped on a rock and was drowned. Thus, the master explained, belief alone is not enough. It must be united to one pointed awareness, which leads to self-realization. The Bhagavad Gita in the 6th chapter underscores the necessity for such one-pointed concentration. Whenever the mind, fickle and restless, wanders from its concentration, let the meditating yogi withdraw it resolutely, spurning every distraction, no matter how alluring, and bring it back again and again under the control of the self. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind.
Thank you. And from Whispers from Eternity, satisfy my soul hunger. O all-pervading Spirit, the breeze of thy inspiration has removed every cloud from my heart. The firmament of my mind is now clear, purified. I behold only thee everywhere. The sunshine of thy joy spreads rapidly to the farthest shores of my being. After long ages of hunger, I feed on thy light. By thy grace and by my constant wakefulness in thee, may this joy be mine forever, forever, and forever. There is a beautiful devotee, so faithful in her heart. And she prayed, I want to thank thee, Lord, for being so close to me so far today. With your help, I've not been impatient. I haven't lost my temper. I haven't been envious or grumpy or judgmental to anyone, my Lord. But soon I'll be getting out of bed, Lord. And then I really will need your help. Amen. So it's not one and done. This is a constant. We're called today to really develop the power of the natural state of prayer, to live in that. Prayer is a divine, constant connection with God, and it begins to live in us as we develop the faith fullness, right? The fullness where we fill all the spaces within us with that faith. It begins to live in every cell of our body, and that's how all the great saints and sages lived. It was their natural state of being. There's a story of Bakswala Baba, and when Asha was here, Nayaswami Asha, she came and she spent some time in Boston, and she's an incredible teacher for Ananda. And she came and she was staying at my house, and we all were sitting around the table and we're talking about going to Bedranath. And she talked about seeing the Bakswala Baba, and Baba had this extraordinary thing. So in the Himalayan mountains, I had gone there a few years after her. It snows so much that the Baba's house had a straw through the chimney so that oxygen could get in. And he was the only one that stayed in these high elevations right on the Tibetan border. You could see the mountains right there. And when Asha went to visit the Baba, she just couldn't believe it. He would go into a box, thus they called him Bakswala Baba, and he would meditate all through the winter months under 50 feet of snow, and he would go be in the Himalayas with the great Babaji Krishna. And he would just soar in that consciousness. And that's how he would, like a hibernated bear, he would be in his little box and Asha was like, when she went on the pilgrimage, she was asking Swami Kriyananda, like, how can that be? How can that be real? And he said, that's his natural state of consciousness. And years later, when I went on my Himalaya pilgrimage with the Ananda Assisi group, I remember being in Bakswala Baba's house, and it just felt like, this really permeated with just beautiful, beautiful sweetness. But then he got a phone call, and it was AT&T, and they wanted to know about his service. And he's like, right? And we're all sitting there, in meditation, and it was like, well, isn't that so natural too, right? Isn't that, he was just in his natural state. He got off the phone, he made sure he had his service on, and then he was able, and he gave us this beautiful inspirational talk, and we sat and we had sung together, and it was a beautiful visit that we had. And the next day we went down off the mountains because it was going to get ready to snow, and a lot of people would get stuck in there. It was incredible to be in that climate, but there were all glaciers all around. It was just so beautiful. But that's it. It's like more and more we become naturally tuning in to the divine. Our consciousness starts rising. It's a state of beingness, and more it's natural for us to have an inner dialogue with the divine and be awake enough to not hear that negative inner dialogue of the ego. Or when we do, we have enough awareness that we're able to make the correction, to bring the vibration of those words up into our higher consciousness, to lift it to the spiritual eye. So one time, Yogananda, he was asked to give a talk, and it was in Phoenix, and he didn't have the funds. He had just come to the United States. And, so he spoke to Divine Mother. He said, Divine Mother, can you help me with the funding? I don't have enough. And immediately, Divine Mother answered, ask Mr. Smith. He will be able to finance this trip. And Yogananda said, you ask him. And a few hours passed, and this man Mr. Smith approached Yogananda and said, God asked me to give you this money. And so that's how Yogananda was so natural, right? That the divine mama, he saw God as a divine feminine with all the qualities of unconditional love, like a mama, holding him, unconditional acceptance, and a divine papa. There's such accessibility, and that's what all the saints had, accessibility to the divine. And the more we develop faith, we have the natural accessibility to just be in that constant dialogue and trusting, just like a little boy. He said, you ask him, I don't want to go do that, and she did it for him. She's that beautiful communication was a constant. And that's what we all can develop within our own self, through our own practices, through showing up for ourselves in meaningful ways. But that's beautiful sweetness of Yogananda's devotion, such a beautiful example of the intimacy, into me and see, right? Intimacy, that inner connection that with the loving divine parents. And so Yogananda says so beautifully in Autobiography of a Yogi, God feels for us. He is not partial to a few, but listens to everyone who approaches him trustingly. His children should have implicit faith in the loving kindness of their omnipresent Father. Prayer is not a ritual carried out in a formal way or a specific way, or specific times, but an ongoing heart to heart, natural heart to heart. And every day we talk to friends and relatives, coworkers about our hopes and disappointments, our losses and needs. Why not talk to the one who knows all the answers? So we are here to talk to God in the language of our own souls. There was a time that a devotee attended a dinner, and the great mystic, Frank Lebach, who wrote Letters of a Modern Mystic, he was asked to do the prayer for dinner, and he just began to speak, and you could see that it was his inner dialogue, his inner connection with the divine, and this natural just channel of beautiful words came out of his mouth that were just, you could see that it was so familiar with him. It was such his pure, natural conversation with the divine. And that's how he began to live, and how, like a lot of us, did he begin to awaken. And he was in the Philippines, and he was asked to be a minister there. And, he was met with a lot of resistance from a lot of people. And he went through a time of really being very alone. And so he turned inward. He turned to the divine. It was the natural thing for him to do, and began to really bring God into his consciousness, really hold faith that God was going to help him, and that there was a higher experience waiting to happen if he just allowed the ego and the fear and the loneliness and the pain to move away. And so in his journal entry, you know, as he's perfecting this connection to the divine, he would walk and talk with God all the time. And in one of his entries, it said, "This week has been a week of wonder. God is at work everywhere. Now that I have discovered God, I feel it is a continuous discovery. One thing I have seen this week is that God loves beauty. Everything he makes is lovely. Clouds tumbling, rivers, colorful trees, and I now know that he makes my thought life beautiful. And when I open all day to him, God, what shall we think of now? And he answers with this gentle, tender dream." So in the next week, his entry begins, "Inwardly, this has been a very uneven week. Too many distractions. My physical conditions, my thoughts of failure have been too much for me. But today is a new beginning." And so that beautiful natural example of how we all go in and out of connection with the divine. We all live in the found, and then we get a little bit lost and disconnect, and we start believing some of the egos about, oh, I'm sick and I'm not doing it right, I'm not good enough. Those thoughts of our ego, we get pulled into them at times. But the more and more we develop the practice of faith, the more the lost gets smaller and the found gets bigger, right? And more we start living in that connection, that divine connection of the found. In the Bhagavad Gita reading today, whenever the mind is fickle and restless, wanders off from its concentration, the meditating yogi will withdraw resolutely, spurning every distraction and bringing it again and again back to self, right? That awareness is that we're holding presence, and we become aware of how our ego gets us lost in time, past and future. It takes us into it, and we get taken out of our truth, out of our sense of beingness. But the more we bring ourselves back through meditation practice, through developing the staying power of staying in holy, loving presence, as all the great saints do, the more we practice that through the techniques of yoga, the more we're able to recognize when that mind tells us something and we say, nope, back to loving presence. And so a belief is in the head. A belief is in the head, and the faith is of the heart. It is based on experience. And, you know, in a beautiful, beautiful story of faith, I read 2 books recently by a great devotee called Michael Singer, and he wrote The Surrender Experience and The Untethered Soul. And he just has this beautiful, beautiful connection with Yogananda. And in the surrender experiment, he decided that he was going to let go of likes and dislikes. He was going to let go of preferences. Oh, I like it when it's sunny out. I don't like it when it's cloudy out. Oh, it's a little bit, you know, he was going to let go of all those preferences and totally surrender to see what God brought him in every moment. And he was just going to let go, and he would watch the resistance in his mind. Oh no, you can't say yes to that. Oh no, this isn't going to be right. That complaining, competing voice of ego, he would recognize it, and still he would keep going into the flow of surrender into his life. What an extraordinary capacity to manifest the life of his dreams through that process. And it's such an amazing book. But in it, you know, part of his surrender, it brought him to Yogananda and to Autobiography of a Yogi. And he said, Yogananda is the master of the entire field of knowledge and experience that I am seeking. He loved God with an intense devotion that took my breath away. I have found my teacher. And Yogananda was able to give him this incredible experience in meditation of really connecting to that unified field, to the whole universe of the divine. And he just knew that. And part of it was that he was inwardly guided and let Yogananda help him. He kept surrendering to the divine and kept moving through life, regardless of the resistance that came forward. And so in his book, The Untethered Soul, he talks about that. Imagine having a roommate, right? And this roommate is like Oh, you're not good enough. You know, I don't like you. Oh, this isn't right. All negative. You shouldn't have done that. Why didn't you clean up that? You know, imagine having a roommate that was on you all the time, that was controlling and negative, and it took your peace away and really disruptive to your life. You would ask that roommate to leave, right? Well, that's what our inner egoic voice does to us. It tells us these things that to try to take us out of God, out of love, out of faith, out of truth. And so we ask that roommate to leave. We just say, we recognize it as not who we are. And we were able to let go of the negativity and judgment and just decide that we don't want to continue to live with a negative roommate in our heads anymore. And he said it so beautifully that it really resonated with me, that when I hear my inner voice saying something like, oh, you're not good enough, Kelly, you did that wrong, you know, it's like, oh, that's my roommate, I'm just going to say goodbye, roommate. And so it's all part of it. And so, you know, it's about really understanding that transcending the egoic mind makes us more open and a capacity to live in perfect faith. And, you know, in psychology, there's Ericksonian developmental psychology, you know, and in the stages of development, there's a conflict at each one. The first one is trust versus mistrust. And, you know, if we're born into this world and we can't trust our caregivers, then, you know, we bring mistrust into our life, or we have to find a way to connect with trust within our life, or we'll just project it onto others. But the last stage of development is about faith and despair, right? And so the more we rise up into faith, we realize that despair is what the ego is taking us out of our own love and our own truth and our own faith. And that, you know, as we develop spiritually, we release some of the thoughts and the ways of being, of sinking into negativity or despair. We rise up in our capacity to know faith. And the stages are really connected to the chakras and in the energy centers, and how, you know, that energy can get blocked in our capacity to just keep working with the energy flow within our body and lifting our consciousness to release the egoic voice in our head and moving up into the spiritual eye and our divine perception. And so just to end, I'll tell a story about the great teacher Babaji. And Babaji is an incredible, credible avatar that is in constant communion. What a great example. Him and Christ together, they send out vibrations of redemption for the spiritual salvation of us all. So being on this path, you know, we have this power and the power of prayer and faith behind them to really guide us out of the taking the wrong turns and staying steadfast on our path of awakening. And so Lahiri says, whenever anyone ushers with reverence the name of Babaji, the devotee attunes an instant spiritual blessing. And so my prayer has been for the last few months, I imagine that I close my eyes and I go through the spiritual eye and I see Babaji in the Himalayan mountains with all the saints around him. And there's a beautiful fire there. And I throw all my desires in that fire. And I say, Babaji, 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 free me of egoic desires. And I run and I jump off the cliff as a leap of faith. And at first I was just like, I was scared, but now I go like this when I jump off you know, and I just imagine myself, you know, free from the restraints of ego and the constriction. And in the autobiography of a yogi, there's a story of a devotee who climbed the Himalaya mountains and found all the devotees with Babaji. And he was so wanted to be a devotee of Babaji. And Babaji said, no, you're not ready. And he just ran and jumped off the cliff. And the other devotees were so heartbroken for him. And Babaji said, go get him. And they brought him up, and Babaji brought him back to life. And he joined into the great teachers and is now part of that beautiful circle of loving devotion, sending us all blessings and help through all the difficulties of our life. So we are so you know, we're in that sacred circle. We're all part of it. And so our prayers can be they can be creative, they can be heartfelt, whatever feels right for you, whatever is natural for you, to just develop that, whatever something might strike you in your readings and you think, oh, that would be beautiful. You know, there's a beautiful affirmation that Yogananda always said, I go forth in perfect faith and the power of omnipresent good, knowing that whatever I need will come to me at the time I need it, right? That absolute surety, that constancy, that knowing is faith. And so I'll end with a prayer from Yogananda that he'd like to share, but I want to share this with all of you, but especially Jackie today, because she's going to be taking her vow of discipleship. And you know, when we call a great spiritual teacher into our life, you know, we're not alone anymore. It fills our hearts and fills our life. And we become so blessed to have such a beautiful, loving support with us all the time. And Yogananda's words are, when a devotee prays incessantly to know God as truth, God sends him a true guru or guide. This divine grace comes to the devotee who demonstrates his sincere desire for liberation by constantly connecting to God. And Yogananda says, God has sent me to you. I will never fail you. I shall always be watching over each of you. And whenever a devotee thinks of me in the silent depths of his soul, he will know that I am near.
Have our offertory. Please take what you'd like to give, place it in your right hand and repeat after me. Divine Mother, we offer to thee the fruit of our labors.
We offer to thee the fruit of our labors.
Bless this offering.
Bless this offering.
That it serve as a channel of thy light.
That it serve as a channel of thy light.
To truth-seeking souls everywhere.
To truth-seeking souls everywhere.
Om.
Om.
Peace. Amen.
Well, this song that Kelly requested has motions to it. So I invite those of you who know them, move all ye mountains that stand in my way. Nothing can stop my progress. Tall trees fall aside, every bramble I slash with the sword of freedom. Move all ye mountains that stand in my way. Nothing can stop my progress. Move all you mountains that stand in my way. Nothing can stop my progress. Tall trees fall aside, every bramble I slash with the sword of freedom. Tall trees fall aside, every bramble I slash with the sword of freedom. Move all you mountains that stand in my way. Nothing can stop my progress. Move all you mountains that stand in my way. Nothing can stop my progress. Tall trees fall aside, every bramble I slash with the sword of freedom. Tall trees fall aside, every bramble I slash with the sword of freedom. Tall trees fall aside, every bramble I slash with the sword of freedom. Tall trees fall aside, every bramble I slash with the sword